Well, thanks first of all for being here. It's really great to have you here. This is the 17th year of my service at the European Leadership Forum. I've been here from the beginning, and it's been such a joy to be able to be a part of the lives of so many of you as you do your work in ministry, and you come here to be, I think, encouraged, to be edified, to be challenged, all the incredible things that really are a part of, I think, the forum experience. So thank you for coming. I'm going to do two sessions here today. The first session is going to be on capacity building. That's a kind of a new term, at least in America. You know, for years we have been called any number of other things. We've developers, we've been fundraisers, we've done a lot of different things in the context of my ministry. This is the company that I began almost 50 years ago. We've had the opportunity in America of working with over 4,000 different organizations in every state of the United States and most of the provinces of Canada. And we still continue to have a very, very active practice in America, although I'm not as involved anymore because the focus of my attention for the last several years has been on overseas activities. And so this year I've been to Russia several times. I've been to Hungary, Egypt, India, all these interesting places. I spent some time this year in Africa, both in Ghana and in Nigeria. And so it's been such a joy for me to be able to do what it is that I do. But more recently, the latest, word that we're using in America to talk about the needs of organizations like yours is that we need to compete, or we need to begin to deal and grow our capacity. And so the words that we're talking about now is capacity building. And I'm here, you all are a part of an organization. And let me just tell you something about your organization. You already have the perfect organization to do what it is that you're doing. And so if everything that's happening in your organization is all that you want to get done, then the realities are you don't have to do anything more than what you're doing. But the realities are most of us realize that there is more potential, there's more need, there's more things that need to be done within the organization wherein you can reach more people with the ministry efforts that you've committed yourself to. And so we're going to talk a little bit about what includes, or what does capacity building include, and then how can you grow your capacity from where it is now, especially on the financial side, to where it is that you want it to be. So we're going to begin with just talking about the things. If we were going as a contractor or as a consultant to one of our clients, and they wanted to do capacity building, we're going to ask them to focus on 8 different areas that basically include what it is that you would do if you were working with someone like me to help your organization build capacity. So the first thing that we look at, and not necessarily in the order of their importance, but the first thing that we would look at would be fundraising. How well are you doing in fundraising? We're going to look at things like, how many donors did you have? How many people were in your database? How many people gave certain gifts at different levels? And we're wanting to look, because everything that we do and what it is that we do in fundraising and in development and in capacity building is really trying to get benchmarks. Where are we, so that we know what it is that we need to do and how we need to act upon it in order to grow. And so fundraising is an important part of what it is that you all need to be addressing. And we're going to talk more specifically in another session about how do you go about raising money. Because raising money, sounds pretty scary. It sounds not too appetizing. We kind of know that we need to do it, but we just don't really like the idea. And if we could fire or hire somebody, we might end up firing them, but we hire somebody because we want somebody else to do the job, not necessarily us. Well, you all need to be involved in the work of development, and that includes what it is that you do into raising money. But that's a whole nother discussion for another time. So fundraising is something that we really look at. We sit down, we analyze all the details that have been given to us by the client, and we begin the process of determining how we're going to act upon that to grow the organization to the level that they want it to grow. The second area of development, interestingly enough, is recruitment. You need to recruit people. Most of you have needs within your organization. you need things to get done, but and you'd like to go to someone and say, you know, what we need in our organizations, we just need more people. So we need to hire more people in order for us to be able to do what it is that God has called us to do. And I'm just telling you now that, you know, you can't, it's interestingly, we've done this for years, and it's interesting to see that, you know, when you hire an employee, you know, oftentimes they begin to become quite comfortable in their new position because they have they raise money, they have you'll have to, I hope they can cut and change this. But they're getting money, you know, as a salary. They have a salary, so they feel a little bit comfortable in the salary. And it tends to be, and we've seen this all over the place as we work in organizations, is that these people that are now salaried, who have been very involved volunteers, become comfortable and they're nearly as effective. Now that's not always the true, but it often happens that way. But we believe that volunteerism is probably the most important thing that we need to be involved in, and learning how to do it than anything else that we do. We use volunteers in a variety of different ways. We use them as advisors. We use them as task force members to help us get information that otherwise we wouldn't get. We use them in a whole lot of other ways. And that means that they become extremely involved in understanding what it is that we do. So we look at recruitment. How is it doing? How many people do we have? Are there ways that we might be able to leverage our emphasis by engaging more volunteers in a variety of different ways? You may want to have a volunteer in every church in the organizations of which you're a part, where you have a church representative, for example, and that person is just a volunteer, but they're representing your organization to the congregation of which they're a part and giving them information in ways of which we can support them and they can support us. So recruitment is really a very significant part of what it is we do. A third thing is retention, because we not only want to recruit people, but we want to retain them. Because if we lose them, that's called attrition. If we lose them, then the realities are we lose the opportunities that can be provided for them. And so we measure retention in every category that we can measure it. For example, did we have donors last year that gave last year that didn't give this year? That's attrition. And there's a reason why attrition takes place. Something has not been done as well as it could have been done. And so that's the reason why we have attrition. And attrition happens in a lot of different ways. It's attrition in volunteers. How many volunteers do we have last year that we didn't have this year? I mean, those are the kinds of things that you need to be concerned about and watching on a regular basis. And most organizations kind of, you know, oh, well, you know, we had somebody that moved or somebody else, and we're trying to disguise, you know, basically a problem that basically needs to be addressed. And so we dig down deep to try to find out exactly what's happening in retention and what's happening in retention and why we've lost people, you know, through attrition. So that's a third area in which we work pretty diligently. The fourth area is public relations. All of these things you do in your organization in one form or another. So we want to determine, you know, how well, you know, what it is that we're doing is impacting the people that receive what it is that we present to them. And it happens in a variety of different ways. We have what we call a developmental or a public relations audit. And our team comes in and they go into every aspect of what it is that you're doing in the context of your organization, evaluating the impact that it has upon the people with whom you're working. That's all of a public relations audit, and it's all a part that impacts, its effectiveness is going to impact your ability to be able to continue to serve and grow and to impact the lives in the ways that God intended for you to do that. A fifth area is database management. Doesn't sound very exciting. I think most of people, when I usually talk about this in a group, I say, now we're going to get to the really fun stuff. We're going to talk about database management. And they look at me and say, you've got to be kidding. This is not exciting. But databases are very, very important. You know, I began my career in 1970. And in 1970, we didn't have computers. A database was 3x5 cards in a shoebox. And some of you remember those days. And if we were looking for something, we'd kind of take the shoebox and we'd kind of work through a development, through an alphabetical order, and we'd see somebody's name, and then we'd flip it over, and it told us all the things. You've been there, right? You could see all the things that you've been doing with this organization, and whenever you went out to visit them, you'd make some little notes, and you'd put it back in the shoebox. Well, it's a whole lot easier now, so that's one of the things that you can be thankful for. That technology has made it possible for us to be able to manage and grow and understand and increase the impact of our ministry through just better reporting. And so databases are significantly important. You should be able in your database to track certain things that you really want to see what's happening. You can get reports through your database. And there's some reports that are very, very important. We want to look at all the reporting that's being done by the organization and how we might be able to help them expand in its capabilities in working and developing the relationships with individuals with whom you work. So the database activity is pretty important. The next area is strategic planning. Do you realize that 90% of all strategic plans fail? That's pretty exciting, isn't it? I mean, why would we do it if 90% fail? Well, generally they fail because they didn't take into consideration how much it was going to cost and how much time was going to have to be debated in order to be able to accomplish the strategic plan. And the biggest mistake, and we have dealt with this literally hundreds of times, is that an organization will get together and they'll begin the process of, well, we need to do strategic planning. And most of you have said that probably once or twice or maybe 3 times or more of doing strategic plans for your organization. So generally we get a group of people, usually the administration and some of their, the board of directors and so forth. And we begin the process of creating a strategic plan. So this is what it is we want to do. And so we report the plan to everybody. And we tell people, that this is what we're going to do. Now, it's interesting to me because I've done this hundreds of times, I think, over the course of the years. And so we tell people we're going to do a strategic plan. And I come into these organizations and I sit down, and sometimes I'm being asked to facilitate a strategic plan. And so I'm sitting down, and I go to the organization. Sometimes it's in a cafeteria, and I'm sitting down with the administration, and the administration's looking at me and saying, well, what are you here for? And I said, well, I'm here to work with a strategic plan. And then they start laughing. And they're saying, oh, yeah, well, we've done that several times. And then they start talking about all the times that they've done it. Well, we had the strategic plan of 2012. That was really a pretty good one. It lasted for about 6 months before it failed. But then we had another one in 2013, another one in 2015, and we've got one coming up in the 17, and then of course 19, the one that you're here for. And all of them are just kind of laughing about it because it's almost like a big joke. But you know why it doesn't happen for the most part? We make plans without understanding that those plans and getting those plans accomplished is going to cost something. So you can make plans from a strategic planning standpoint, but you have to have a corresponding developmental plan that basically is going to provide the resources that you need in order to be able to grow the organization. And you know what the resources are? They're God, their people, their money, and their time. Those are the 4 issues that basically help us to succeed. And we have to have a corresponding plan for raising the resources that we need in order to be able to fulfill the strategic plan. So strategic planning is extremely important. The 7th area is organization. We need to learn how to organize and how to organize better. We provide a variety of resources where we help people understand how they can use organization to really impact the growth of their organization. And you need to organize better in most instances. I'm not suggesting that's true in every instance, but in most instances, and I think probably the majority of instances, people have not organized themselves well so that they do what it is that they've been called to do exceptionally. And so organization is extremely important. And then the final area of the capacity building process is evaluating outcomes. You see, sometimes the outcomes of what it is that we do isn't as much as we would perhaps have hoped for. There's a charitable foundation that I'm quite familiar with, and we go oftentimes and talk to them about projects that we're involved in. And many times they're schools or universities or whatever the case might be. And if I were to take this organization, your organization, and put yourself in this picture, if I were to do this to your organization, and you came to the foundation and you said, would you consider making a gift to our ministry? Now that's a legitimate question, right? I mean, you would like to have them support what it is that you're doing. Well, the next, my friend would say, from the foundation would say, yes, we'd be more than interested in looking at what it is that you're doing and seeing if we could help. So the next question, expectantly, is, well, what do you need from us, right? And that same foundation would say something like this. All I need to see from you is, number one, your mission statement. And number two, I want a list of the people that you were working with 10 years ago and their email addresses. Pretty simple. He says, that's all you want? That's all we want right now. And so what this organization will do is they'll take your mission statement, and I hope you have a mission statement. They will take your mission statement and they will extrapolate from that mission statement what it is they think a person should look like 10 years from now. That person that you used and worked with 10 years from now, what do they look like now? Now think about that, even if it's in your church. Think about your church. I mean, and you all have churches, and you have, or many of you either have a church or you are a part of a church. But imagine that you have an 18-year-old in your church. And you're asked now, because this person has been in the church for years and years and years. They grew up in the church. Their parents are the elders and the deacons of the church, and they've been there. And then that child grows, and he's been part of the youth ministry. He's been part of the Sunday school activities and so forth, and he's there. And now we're asking him, we want to look at what he looks like 10 years from now. In other words, was your mission successful in fulfilling and accomplishing what it is that was intended to do? And they take surveys of all of these people that were there 18 or 10 years ago, and then they evaluate it. And it's on the basis of their evaluation, which is going to determine whether or not they want to support you. Now, if your organization was evaluated that way, would someone support you? That's a question you need to ask. And that's the issue that we have to grapple with. So it's not just about what we do, it's about how it's done, and is it really effective in fulfilling what it is that we want done.